I'm Damon Jones, New York representative of Blacks in Law Enforcement of America, and I am making this video today because we have formally requested, our organization has formally requested from the Honorable Judge B. Lefkowitz. We also, as I'm scrolling, the Honorable Judge Kathy Davidson, Honorable Anthony Scarpino, Westchester County District Attorney, and the Honorable Letitia James, New York State Attorney General, for a formal investigation of formerly Deputy Police Commissioner Joseph Spiezio, because we believe that Mr. Spiezio committed perjury in an affidavit he submitted to the court in front of the Honorable Judge Joan B. Lefkowitz on 9/17/28 in reference to his residency requirements as Deputy Police Commissioner of Mount Vernon Police Department. After reviewing Mr. Spiezio's affidavit submitted to the court on 9/27/2018, we believe that Mr. Spiezio violated New York Penal Code Article 210. The act of swearing falsely or perjury occurs when a person makes a false statement in which he or she does not believe to be true, while either giving testimony or under oath in a subscribed written instrument. So, in this affidavit, Mr. Spiezio stated that because I reside in Westchester County, this is Mr. Spiezio speaking, I reside in Westchester County. I am full compliance with all applicable residency rules. He also states, as a public safety official, I am exempt from that residency requirement under the police officer's law, although I am required to live within the county. So, on information and belief, we believe Mr. Spiezio was not compliant with any residency, especially when he made that statement on 9/27. And here's why we say that. According to the testimony of former Mount Vernon Police Commissioner Robert Kelly, which was submitted to the United States District Court, Southern District of New York, on 4/16/2018, case number 7-18CV03007. So any of y'all want to look it up, you could, if this is embedded in Facebook, you can look in the description. We have links. We provide links to all this. If you're watching on YouTube, just look in the description. We're going to have the links that you could click and you can look at all the paperwork. On February 1st, Mr. Spiezio was completing his personal forms to formalize his position as Deputy Police Commissioner of Mount Vernon. This is 2016 now. Kelly was required to endorse to legitimize Spiezio's appointment to the city charter. Mr. Spiezio submitted to Mr. Kelly his Florida's driver's license as a formal identification. Mr. Kelly then stated, as a matter of law, New York State Consolidated Law, Public Officers Law, PBO 3B1, appointment of a sworn law enforcement officer position requires New York State residency. I repeat again, requires New York State residency. Mr. Kelly also states that Mr. Spiezio's prima facie out-of-state residency made him ineligible to be appointed to a sworn law enforcement position. Mr. Kelly refused to endorse that appointment. And those of us familiar with Mount Vernon politics, Mr. Robert Kelly was soon fired. So Mr. Kelly submitted his statement to the court. Mr. Spiezio submitted his statement to the court on 9/27/18 that he was a Westchester resident. Mr. Spiezio was well aware he did not qualify to be appointed Deputy Police Commissioner because he has no New York State identification. he has a Florida's driver's license. Right? So, on February 3rd, 2019, Mr. Spiezio was pulled over in New Rochelle. New Rochelle Police Officer J. Diaz was the acting officer that pulled Mr. Spiezio over. In Officer Diaz's report, Mr. Spiezio stated he didn't have any identification. Mr. Spiezio didn't have his driver's license, his police ID, or shield. Officer Diaz reported that the license check resulted in Mr. Spiezio not having any valid New York identification. He had no New York identification. He had nothing to prove that he was a New York resident, even after the check by a duly sworn police officer of New Rochelle. And it's also in the police report said Mr. Spiezio had 2 New York IDs. How did that happen? One was suspended and the other one was surrendered. Now, that's Exhibit C. You can go down with me. We're going to exhibit to exhibit. Now, according to the Florida Department of Motor Vehicles, Mr. Spiezio was issued a Florida state ID from 2/23/2008 and then 3/10/2014 and issued a driver's license 3/10/2014. So Mr. Spiezio had a Florida driver's license since 2014. According to Florida, new residents with an out-of-state license must obtain a Florida's driver's license within 30 days of establishing their permanent residence in Florida. This is Florida. To obtain a Florida's driver's license, Mr. Spiezio was required to surrender his out-of-state license. So maybe that's why one came up surrendered. I'm just saying. So I'm just saying, right? So according to Florida DMV, if you are a Florida resident, you must get a Florida's license to drive a motor vehicle on public streets and highways. Florida DMV also defines a resident as a person who his principal place of domicile, I'm going to read it again, his principal place of domicile is the state of Florida. And he has to stay 6 consecutive months, registered to vote, and have made a statement of domicile pursuant to Section 22217 Florida statutes, and it filed for homestead exemption on property in the state. But if you have a Florida's driver's license, according to Florida, Florida is your principal state, not New York. Again, according to New Rochelle Police Officer Diaz's report, Mr. Spiezio had 2 New York ID numbers. One was suspended, the other one was surrendered. According to the Journal News report, right, and that was exhibit, the issue of Florida is exhibit E. What Florida says, when they give out their Florida driver's license, which Mr. Spiezio has, Florida considers Mr. Spiezio their resident, right? Let's go back a little bit. If you are a Florida resident, you must get a Florida license to drive a motor vehicle. If you are a Florida resident, you must get a Florida license. Okay. Do we got it? I hope we got it. According to the Journal News, when they were reporting the incident of Mr. Spiezio being pulled over with no valid New York State identification, according to the Journal News, The police listed his residence as Longboat Key, Florida. Not New Rochelle, not Westchester County, not Orange County, not Rockland County, not none of the 5 boroughs, not upstate, not in Albany. They listed Mr. Spiezio's residence in Longboat Key, Florida. Now let's break it down here. Mr. Spiezio was issued a Florida driver's license in 2014. Mr. Spiezio presented his Florida license to former Commissioner Kelly to be appointed in 2016. Kelly refused. Mr. Spiezio made no attempt to correct his residency according to New York State Consolidated Laws, Public Officers Law, PB03B1, which requires appointed person to be a New York State resident. Mr. Spiezio made false affidavit to the court about his residency September 2018, knowing he had no proof of residency. He didn't even fix it. Mr. Spiezio was pulled over by New Rochelle Police Department in February 2019 with no valid New York State identification to would support his testimony that he did a couple of months earlier in September. Just 5 months earlier. So he lied. He lied. It appears that he lied, but it's up to the DA's office to review it and look into it, or the AG's office to review it and look at it. But it appears that he lied. He told a lie to the court. Now, Mr. Spiezio also states in the signed affidavit that he had been properly appointed to the office of Deputy Commissioner by the duly elected mayor. Okay. Well, the fact of the matter is, Mr. Spiezio was never properly appointed to the position of Deputy Police Commissioner. The Mount Vernon City Clerk, George Brown, confirmed that Mr. Spiezio did not submit his oath of office dated January 27, 2016 until June 1st, 2016. Mr. Spiezio failed to abide by the city charter, which made his appointment illegal. The city charter states that all appointments must be submitted within 15 days of swearing in. Look at Exhibit G. Mount Vernon City Charter, Chapter 24, Article 4. Mr. Spiezio, he was well aware of his violation of the charter with his oath of office and the 15-day grace period. If you look at Exhibit H, it's emails between me and Mr. Spiezio discussing his failure in not handing in his oath of office within the 15-day period. That's Exhibit H. Can't get no better than that. On February 14th, 2019, Mount Vernon City Clerk George Brown, via telephone, confirmed that there were no updated oath of office for Deputy Police Commissioner Joseph Spiezio on file. Mr. Brown also confirmed that Mr. Spiezio did not follow proper procedure according to the city charter in submitting his oath of office dated January 27, 2016 to the clerk's office 6 months later until June 2015. 5 months later, 5 months later until June 1st, 2016. Mr. Brown also confirmed, the city clerk also confirmed that this was a violation of the city charter. And what does the city charter say? That after 15 days, it immediately goes vacant, that position. Now, You have the emails, and also Exhibit F are letters between the city clerk, George Brown, and Mayor Thomas. They're letters. And he is telling Mayor Thomas that Mr. Spiezio's appointment is invalid. You could look for it yourself. So you could look at Exhibit F with the letters that go back and forth between George Brown and Mayor Thomas about the appointment of Joe Spiezio. So he wasn't duly sworn in. He was holding the position illegally. According to the charter, he didn't even have a license. Did they even do a background check? How about that? They just gave him a badge and a car, and he was running around playing cop, putting Mount Vernon and the Westchester community in danger, involving himself in homicides, putting the community in danger. He made Mount Vernon and the community of Westchester unsafe and dangerous. So this is why we wrote letters to the judges over the case. We wrote letters to the Westchester County District Attorney, Emily Scarpino. We wrote letters to the AG's office. Mr. Spiezio had made mockery of policing, mockery of the justice system, mockery of the courts for 3 years, mockery of the Democratic Party. He just made a mockery of everything Mount Vernon and everything black, because we know this wouldn't happen in the city. This wouldn't happen in White Plains. This wouldn't happen in Scarsdale. This wouldn't happen in any prominent city. This only happens to poor people. It only happens to cities that they consider disadvantaged. You will never catch a black man being able to do this in Scarsdale. They will pull his behind out the first time he put the lights on in the truck. The feds and everybody will swoop down and grab his behind right up out of there. But the people of Mount Vernon have to deal with this nonsense for over 3 years, until New Rochelle cops doing their job pulled his behind over to show that he was just riding dirty. A deputy police commissioner just riding dirty. So I hope, those that are watching this video and you could read all the stuff, hope you call the DA's office, tell him to do his business. Handle his business. Handle his business. This man has made a mockery of the justice system in Westchester County. Peace.